Welcome back to Scott Family Homestead. Today we are in the high tunnel and we're going to be working with our tomatoes. We primarily grow tomatoes and peppers in here, and we're to the point where we need to get these trellised. So I'm going to show two different ways that we trellis tomatoes. In the high tunnel we're going to do a Florida weave, and then outside of the high tunnel I have some extra tomatoes. Those we're going to use a cattle panel trellis. So I'm going to show you both ways that we trellis these tomatoes, but first we got to get some of the weeds out of here. This is a very weedy garden right now. I have not addressed much of it at all, so it's going to be a huge project today. Thankfully it's not terribly hot in here. It's only about 60 degrees outside. We should be able to work in here for quite a while today without overheating. I'm going to do this row by row. We have 7 rows of tomatoes in here, and I think approximately 12 tomato plants per row. And because we're growing so many tomatoes, the easiest and cheapest way for me to do this is the Florida weave. Essentially we're going to use twine. I've got one little run of it in here. We're going to use Baylor's twine just because that's what we have on hand. We've also used nylon twine before for this. Basically you're going to run it from one T-post all the way down to another, and then on your way back you're going to weave it around the tomato plants and make sure you tie it really tight, and that will hold up your plants. We're going to do about every 6 inches as these plants grow until we hit the top of our T-posts. So usually our tomatoes do grow the full 5 to 6 feet in here using this method. It allows for good airflow. It allows for us to do a lot of pruning and trimming, and it allows for us to address blight when we start to get to that point later in the season when we start to see some blight symptoms showing up. When we do this with a cattle panel trellis, like you'll see out in the other garden, we do tomatoes on either side of the trellis. So it's a little bit more crowded. With this we do a single row of tomatoes all the way down, and then we leave about 3 feet before the next row starts. As the season goes on, they will start to grow together to the point of where it's almost difficult to get between them. So we have found this is a pretty good spacing. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My favorite tool for weeding is this Japanese weeding hoe. This one's by Bare Bones. I can't find a link for it on Amazon right now. They have a couple other options that would work really well, like a square weeding hoe. But I'll link a similar one. Just know that it's not the exact one I have, so I can't give you a perfect review on it. Over the years we have sharpened this a bit. It does get dull eventually, and you do have to sharpen them. But this is going to not only cut your weeds off right at soil level, but it actually pulls up some of the soil, so you do get some of the roots. It's not as effective as hand pulling every root out and getting rid of those weeds, but it's enough that we can clear everything away from the base of our plants, and we'll come through again later. It's a very streamlined, easy to use tool that works quickly and efficiently. So if you are looking at gardening in a smaller space, this might be more of a late season weeding tool for you, just to get the residual stuff, and early in the year you want to pull everything by the roots. But for us, we jump right to this one pretty early on. It's a great time saver for me. Now the rows in here, I'm gonna have to scoot out of the way so you can see. The rows are pretty clear. Now that's because we have drip line irrigation in here. So there's no moisture getting in between these rows right now, and nothing is really coming up. We silage tarped this. We used a pond liner, I've talked about that before, for a couple of months before we planted in here. And that has been really quite effective at keeping our rows clear. Now where we're watering it and where our drip line goes, we're getting lots of weeds coming up. Our compost this year was full of weeds. I was very surprised actually. This was the first time we ordered from them, and I didn't get a whole lot of specifics on it. I wish I would have asked a couple more questions. But there's lots of weeds. There's also vegetable seeds in there. I've had a few volunteer tomatoes, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but I wish that the compost had been a little bit hotter. Obviously you don't want a super hot compost, but I wish that it had taken care of the weed seeds, had gotten hot enough to take care of those weed seeds, because not only are we planting in a hay field out here full of grasses, but now I have a lot of weeds that I've never had before, different types, and they are just coming in thick. It's so much. So that's another part of this. In these center rows, there's no compost down. Right where each row of tomatoes is, we put a pile of compost. And so it is just coming full weeds, full grass. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. So I'll show you a little bit of how I use this tool, but otherwise we're going to try to fly through this pretty quickly. I'm not going to film all of it, maybe a little hyperlapse, but then we're going to get to tying up these tomatoes. They are tall enough right now that I think we're going to probably have to do 2 rows of twine just to get started. Last year, I did not have center posts in, and you don't have to. I would say this is probably a 24-foot stretch from one end to the other, somewhere in that range, 20 to 24. And last year we ended up adding just a small fence post in the middle. We were able to weave it down through the Florida weave and just add some support, but things were definitely tipping over. So this year we did add a center T-post, so we're doing 10 to 12-foot stretches between T-posts. So this tool, you can kind of pull it right under the soil level and get rid of all of these. If your roots of your plants are close to soil level, this isn't going to work as good because you're going to be cutting into roots, but my tomato roots are pretty low in here. And so this just clears it right up. Now, if you have drip irrigation, you have to either lift or be very careful around that. I have cut my drip irrigation with this before. But this tool works really well, really quick and efficient. That's between 2 plants already. You can get really close to the base of plants. That's got a nice pointed edge, so you can get kind of right up in there. And we'll just work our way down the line. This row is not too bad. We've got some other rows. This is a sunflower. We've got some other rows that are going to be a little bit more work. It's just a sea of green in here. Just outside of the high tunnel we got all of our jerseys, so I get to watch them while I work. We got Rory. Just barely see little Sage out there. Rosie. And then our Jersey Highland steer, Douglas. Alright, these 2 rows are done, looking much better, and they're ready for trellis. Okay, so we got 2 rows done. It took about 25 minutes. So it will be about an hour and a half of weeding to get this whole high tunnel done. But that's not terrible. It is getting pretty warm in here, so it'll have to be done in stages in the early morning hours. We'll see what we can get done today. But these are ready to be trellised. We're going to get our twine ready, and I'll show you how we do the Florida weave. And then they're also going to have to be pruned. You can see these are really bushy tomato plants. I've only trimmed just a little bit on these. Everything growing in here is indeterminate tomato plants. So there's 2 types of tomato plants. There is a type of tomato plant that is determinate, meaning it's only going to grow so big. And with those tomato plants, you let them get real bushy and you don't prune everything out of it. Those are like your Romas. That's really the only one that I grow that's determinate. And micro tomatoes, so like our little orange hats and micro toms, we don't prune those at all because those are also determinate. They're only going to get so big. The rest of these, they grow like vines. They're going to grow as tall as they possibly can. And you can prune for airflow and let them grow nice and tall, flower out in tiers, and hopefully keep them healthier longer by keeping them pruned. So we're going to work on that after we get them trellised up. Some of these look pretty good, but you can see in the back some of them are laying down or have been on their side for a while. So we're going to have to kind of force them to grow upright, and then after a few days of sunlight, they'll start to grow that direction. We are definitely a little late on this if you want them to grow very straight from the get-go. you're gonna have to do this earlier than I did. But it's not too late. We can still do this. Tomatoes will grow like I said, like a vine, so they'll grow across the ground, and they naturally will be like a big mat of a plant. And you'll see they'll put roots down from the stem straight down into the ground so they can take up even more nutrients. That's not how we grow tomatoes. Traditionally, we have always staked up tomatoes. That's how you see it. Pretty much everybody grow them. But they're actually not really designed to go that way. But we get more production, more airflow, healthier plants by staking everything upright. Down near the ground, you're going to start to get these little knobs on there. Now, this is a very common question I get. Are these eggs? Is this something to worry about? What is this on my tomato plant? And all this is adventitious roots trying to grow out the stem because it felt moisture, and that signaled to the plant to put out more roots. So when a plant has contact with the ground, or in a high tunnel like this, or if you're having a really wet season, if it senses a lot of moisture, it will start to put out those roots. And they do look a little bit like eggs. A lot of times they're white or off-white, little knobs on there. Sometimes you'll even see a root come out of it. But those are perfectly fine. They won't do anything to your plant except maybe take up a little bit extra moisture and nutrients. So nothing to worry about. It's not a disease or a problem, but it is going to be pretty prevalent in my tomatoes that have been laying on the ground. I'm using this round bale twine. It's very plasticky feeling. I'm not entirely sure what it's made of. I have used the typical brown twine, almost like a kitchen twine that you can buy at the store. Now that would work in here, but that will not work outdoors. It gets soft and eventually breaks down with the sun and the water, the rain. So I've also used a nylon for this, kind of like a clothesline type, and that's good too. Just keep in mind that whatever you're using, you are going to have to throw away. It's kind of a bummer to use plastic and then have to throw all this plastic away. So if you can use a twine that will break down eventually, it's not a bad idea. But if you're doing it outside, it's not going to make it through the season. So you're going to get really frustrated with it. So we're going with whatever this is. It is solar twine. It'll withstand the sun. It does get hot and sunny in here. We're just going with this. You're going to start on the bottom of your T-post. We're going to go about 4 to 6 inches up and just tie this on however you would like. T-posts are better than other posts for this because they have the little teeth that can kind of grab on so your twine won't slide down. Now if you're doing this before you have a bunch of plants in here, you can just run it down to the other end, twist it around, and bring it on back. But because we've got plants in here, we're going to start by weaving this. This is best to do if you have somebody who can help you, but I'm out here on my own today, so I'm going to show you how you do it by yourself. Camera angles might be a little tricky, so bear with me. So we're going to start by going behind this first plant, back here, right at that level. Try to clear the branches. And then we're going to go in front of the next one. Our third one, we're going to go back behind. We're going to run a single line all the way down, alternating front and back. Now we're at our middle T-post. So right at that same level, we want to keep it as flat as possible. We're going to go around this post twice. I'm going to go up over the top twice. This is the part where it's helpful to have another hand, another person. Because you want to pull this line as tight as you can and get this nice and tight. Now I'm going to continue on and do the other half of my line. Going in front. Behind. Front. Behind. Right down on this end. We're really tight to that middle point. Now we're going to do the same thing here. Go up and over the top. Swirl it around twice. We're turning around now. We're going to work our way back. So this twine goes behind this plant, so on the way back we're going to go in front of it, and we're just going to alternate what we did before. So you've got twine on both sides of the plant, and it crisscrosses in between every plant. And that will start to hold some of these up that are tipping over. We've made it to our center post. We're going to pull as tight as we can. If you have somebody to help you stand up your plants, that's helpful. Pull it tight, and go up and over. Loop around. This midway point is really helping me a lot this year because we've got a long stretch to go. And just keep going. We've made it back to our original post. Everything's weaved nice and tight. Up and around again. Just keep pulling that till it's real tight. If you leave a little bit of line, it gives you a chance to tighten it later if it starts to loosen up on you. We're just going to tie it around both lines here. We're good to go. That's it. Now I'm going to run one another 6 inches up. With that one, I'm just going to run it down and back real quick. And then as we prune our plants, we'll kind of stick them up into the second one. Okay, we've got 2 levels of trellis here. Now I need to get this plant up in there. What you're going to do is take the back and pull it to the front. Be careful not to cut the leader or bend the leader when you're doing this. And then ideally, if you can get kind of a strong branch up above there, it will hold it. Now this has way too much foliage on the bottom for us, so we're going to get our snippers out. If you deal with blight, you're going to want to disinfect your snippers between each plant. Alright, the first thing I'm going to do on this bottom line down here, any foliage that's below that is going to go. So I'm going to trim everything off below the bottom line. Blight lives in your soil, and by splashing upwards or having plant material touch the soil is how you get blight onto your plants. So you want to trim off everything that's low on this plant. Now if you have really tiny plants, you're going to want to go easy on this, but because these are big, we can take off all of that. We're not going to affect how much this plant can photosynthesize. We're not taking enough off to affect that. Everything down here is going to go. Anything that's growing towards the ground or straight down is going to go. Anything that's sagging that direction. Then we're going to do all of our suckers. So that's the branches growing in the armpits here. Some of mine are going to be pretty big because we've waited a while on this. We're going to trim those out. Spread this out up here. At this point, if you want, you can remove flowers. We're really early into the season. If you want this to continue to grow roots and length, you could remove those flowers. I'm not going to bother. This is a cherry tomato plant. It's going to grow huge. It's going to bush out. It's going to grow tons and tons of fruit. But I'm not really worried about this slowing it down, so I'm going to go ahead and leave those flowers this time. Anything that's growing down towards the ground, we're going to get rid of. We want lots of airflow. I think I'm even going to take these 2 down here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a stub on there because it's sitting on my twine. That's going to hold it up. And now we have a nice clean, trellised tomato plant. Looks completely different than when we started. It's good to go. This one has a second leader. Now with this, you can trellis it with a split and let it have 2 main leads. That's perfectly fine if you'd like to do that, if you have the space for it. I plant my tomatoes close enough that I don't really have the space to start doing 2 leads. So I'm going to remove this. Now, if you have a long season, we do not, but if you do, you can remove these bottom branches, stick this in water, and it will create its own roots where it's touching the water, and you have a new tomato plant. If I had the season for that, I would definitely be doing it. Free plants, it's awesome. But here, I'm just not going to get that established fast enough to really get anything out of it. Nice and clean. So check these 2 out versus the rest of my row. It's good. It's going to take a little bit of time. One thing I'm going to do, I had blight really bad last year and I didn't handle it all that well. I have a video about it. But I assume that my soil still has blight in it. Now that I've trimmed all these, I am actually going to spray the bottoms of these plants and the surface of the soil with the treatment for blight. I believe it's a copper solution. I'll put on the screen here what it is that you should use for blight. I don't remember, but I do have a bottle of it. I tried to use it for late season blight last year, and it did prolong things a little bit, but it didn't fix the problem. So I'm hoping hitting it early will help. I am not a big one for sprays. I don't even typically use organic sprays. I do hand picking of pests, but growing in a tunnel like this and our primary crop being tomatoes, we're just going to give it a try this year and get ahead of it. Another option would be to put it through your drip irrigation. I have not done that before. Something to consider that you can also set it up to do that. Most importantly, we're going to get airflow, 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 and nothing touching the ground. That's the big one. So if you don't want to use any sprays, start there at a minimum. I do want to say, we talked about determinate tomatoes. I do trim the bottom 4 to 6 inches off of my determinate tomatoes to prevent this. Okay, I'm going to take a little water break here and then we'll get outside. It's getting very warm in here. I don't think I can do a whole lot more than 2 rows this morning, but that means we're a quarter of the way through the tomatoes. So it's not terrible. The longer I wait to do this, the worse the weeds are going to get. So we're going to try to get on top of it. Hopefully early morning work, we can get this done. I'm going to go show you how I'm going to do my outdoor tomatoes. That's a less extensive project, just throwing a couple T-posts in and a cattle panel up. And I've been working on weeding those tomatoes this week, so they're not so bad. The rest of that garden, terrible, but we're just doing bit by bit right now, trying to keep up with what we can. Weeding the things that are the most important and going from there. You can probably tell, but I have a cold, which is really kind of limiting how much work I can do at once. Pretty worn out, pretty run down, and the heat is not helping. So we're going to go get those tomatoes tied up, and we'll come back to the high tunnel at another time, and hopefully I'll have a full garden tour for you soon where everything looks pretty and weeded, right? It's not really our style, but yeah, we'll do a garden tour one of these days. So out here I have this double row that goes all the way down, and then I have a second row that goes part way. So we're going to deal with that another day. We're just going to do this long one for now. We are going to start up here. A cattle panel is 16 feet long, so we'll see how far that gets us. And then anything on the end that doesn't reach the cattle panel, we'll just put a regular tomato cage on those. Cattle panels are about 4 feet tall. Your tomatoes can get significantly taller than that. So we're going to lift this off the ground. Our plants are tall enough already that we can tie them up at least 6 inches off the ground. So we're going to lift this. It won't sit flat on the ground, just to give us a little more height as these things get growing. All right, we're gonna tie up some of these tomatoes. A few of them are still a little too short to make it over here, so we'll just leave those, let them grow. But the ones that are tall enough, I'm gonna use this tomato tape. A friend gave me a whole bunch of this years ago, so I'm just working my way through it. There are better options than this. My favorite would probably be the little clips. It basically clips around the stem of the plant, and you can just clip it to something. That would be ideal because they're reusable and no waste, but they're also a little bit more expensive, and I have this for free, so I'm going to use this. It's easy to tear, which is nice. It has a little stretch to it, so as your plants grow, they won't tip over, but they're not in a real tight spot. In hindsight, so when I planted these, I planted one plant on each side lined up. I think it would almost be better to stagger them, kind of in a zigzag. They're not tied up in the exact same spot, but we're just going to take our plant and tie it nice and loose. It doesn't have to be super tight. The goal is just to direct it upwards. And then, same as inside, we're going to trim up all this low stuff. It's very dirty. A lot of this has already gotten splashed back from the ground with the rain out here. We're going to try to get that trimmed up. And there's only a few of these that need to be tied up. We planted these last, so they're smaller, but as they grow, now they have a place to be trellised. There were 3 plants on the end, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, that did not reach the trellis, so I'll just put a cage around those. Tomato cages are not my favorite, but I do have some around here. We'll just throw those on the end ones, and they'll be good to go. Looks kind of nice to have a little structure out here, a little more than just an in-ground garden. So there we go, we got 2 ways to trellis your tomatoes. What is your favorite way? Do you use something else? Do you like cages? Are you doing physical trellises like this? Or are you using twine, tying things up? I'd love to hear from you. I know a lot of people use different things. I know in high tunnels sometimes people do the trellising, like the drop lines, from the top down, and then you can reuse it year after year. That's awesome. I'm a little bit non-committal as to where everything's going to go, so I redo my trellising every year. And for that flexibility, we like the Florida weave. But whatever works for you. We've got a little bit more work ahead of us with all of this grass and weeds. But like I said, hopefully we'll be coming to you with a garden tour soon. So thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We're so glad that you are here. You're such a blessing to our family. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye, guys.